Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we are discussing There Are Aliens. In your setting. You know, maybe. So, that's what we're discussing this time. In our Sci-Fi July theming. We have several people here this time, so let's go ahead and get those introductions done. I'll start us off, and then we'll go like we did last time. Josh, Dan, Wesley. Compass is combined with Dan, and then we've got Scrat from Squirrel Plays. So, I am Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and we're glad that you're here with us on our Sci-Fi July. Like I said last time, we're going to be discussing this one, and the only main thing I had as far as an update, we're still going towards our $100 a month goal for the Inn of Planar Crossroads. If you want to help support that, you can do that. And I did work a little bit on the webpage. It is not very pretty, but it's functional. It's not pretty, but it's functional. You can click on whichever of the buttons you want to for Patreon, Subscribestar. Well, I don't have Patreon there. So Subscribestar, Locals, PayPal, Direct Pay if you want to do that instead. So there you go. That's what I've got as far as announcements for me. What you got, Josh?
Hey, I'm Josh from Copper Dragon Games. You can find me over on YouTube or copperdragongames.com. No announcements. Who's up next?
Dan from Avenue Studios. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you find podcasts, along with my good friend and supporter, Mr. Moral Compass. Thank you for being here, my friend. And in this collaboration with Inn of Planar Crossroads, we do live streams on Wednesdays, and we build a one-shot and then play it as a playtest with some of our supporters. So check us out, bounce back and forth between the two channels to see what we build based on these discussions here. And I'm especially excited for Sci-Fi July because Mr. Moral Compass will be our game master extraordinaire, and we'll be playing some Starfinder 2nd edition, which is community created. So I'm very excited for that.
Awesome. I'm Wes from DM Tales. You can find me at dmtales.com or DM Tales TTRPG on YouTube. I do a lot of video reviews, tell stories, give tips, hints, and generally make myself a nuisance. Would love to have you show up.
Uh-huh. Compass.
All right, my turn.
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Bora Compass, Avenue Studios, After Quest, go watch it. Beautiful Wives. Yep, there you go.
That's all you need to know.
All right. What you got, Scrat?
Oh, my next. Yeah. Scrat from Squirrel Plays over on YouTube. We talk about writing, character making, world building, all that good stuff for making your world that you want to write in, whether that's TTRPGs, writing books, writing movie scripts, whatever the case may be. That's what we like to pick at over there and talk about, but we also share the other things that the community has made that they're willing to put out there. So lots of fun to see what all of y'all are making. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I am shouting out OKSDM on YouTube. They talk about TTRPG stuff, and right now have gathered up, I believe, some playtesters for their Sagas system. That is a setting agnostic system. And seems interesting so far. Go check them out.
All right. There we go. That's so good. We did so good on that. All right. So that's all of our stuff. That's announcements, and that's Levi's spotlight. So there you go. Yeah. So that means it's time for you to come in and sit down around the hearth with us. Join us with your preferred beverage as we discuss There Are Aliens! Maybe, in your setting. So, cool.
School.
All right. So, I'll give you guys something to start chewing on again. So,
Okay.
with There Are Aliens, I think that aliens are pretty ubiquitous in a lot of our fiction right now. So you can find a lot of examples. You can do a lot of things with aliens. But if you're going to do something with aliens, I highly encourage you to make your aliens weird and different. They don't all have to look like humans. They shouldn't all look like humans. It doesn't make sense biologically. But now we can go and start chewing on that.
I'll bounce right off of that, actually. It's something Ryan, my brother Ryan on Bomb Squad, he's our sci-fi guy. But if you are going to do that, it could very well indicate that there is some supernatural force or some founding thing that is specifically making everything that way. Once you do that, if everywhere you go, everything is following a very specific path, that's a very hardcore indicator that there's something intelligent behind it, or, you know, take it however you want for your world setting. But if you're having that consistent theme, I would make the argument that it starts to do that. Otherwise, you go crazy wild.
That's how TNG explained it. They literally had an episode about that. Like, this is why we all look alike.
That's funny.
The aliens did it.
Because
yeah, which would now explain why you can have like half Klingons and half Vulcans and stuff. Because otherwise,
well,
now you can do that.
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but okay. I mean, that's one of the tropes of this whole setting type of thing. Anyway, when you get into it, humans will ship anything in these sci-fi settings.
I mean,
it gets always.
We're all
pretty
on the
much
internet,
the entire theme of Ringworld, right? That's just all it's all about. So.
I mean, it keeps getting into more of like the scientific aspect. Like if you think about it, what is it? If I think different types of races in a species can intermix. So by that very aspect, are the different races that are called in the universe actually just all part of, like the same species? And it gets into a very interesting aspect when you bring that in. And if you start calling them different species, is like, but they're able to intermix, would that be scientifically incorrect?
So that gets into some of the fun thing about the nebulousness of the exact definition of species. Because there's something called a ring species. So let's say you have like 5 species of 5 very closely related type of a bird, right?
Okay.
So in this case, A and B could have fertile, viable, all that young. B and C could have similarly fertile, viable, all that young. But A and C could not. But C and D and E, and then E and A, you can get this like weird web where certain segments of them can. But if you go far enough away, it stops. But some points, it like maybe kind of returns. So like, species is the best word we have for things right now. But like, biology is kind of messy.
Right. Sounds like it.
Well,
I think in some of these sci-fi settings, I think they treat humans as like the type O species that can just donate to anybody.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Oh my
And-
God.
humans, the universal sperm donors.
Universal donor. You're O negative. So, oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
That,
I mean,
that went a little
fantasy
farther than
does
I meant
too.
But hey, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, fantasy's just as bad. Your
That's
magics
true,
are just as bad. They're even
Oh, yeah,
worse
for
sometimes because you get like weird magical experiments, which does come into some of it.
Sure.
Though you can also get weird sci-fi experiments with like,
That's true.
Also
so
true.
other than the reproductive proclivities of humans, I think an important
Go
question
there to start. That's what I want to know. So,
an
There's
important
aliens.
question, if there are aliens, is are humans and aliens integrated together in an existing society, or are aliens and humans notably separate, right? It's like, maybe they were light years away and they just met, and it's not the happiest of meeting. Maybe you go with the trope that there's some intergalactic group and they're not sure how they feel about humans yet. Deciding, like, once you have decided that you do have aliens, and maybe you've decided how weird or not they are. Because there's a lot of fun to be had with very weird aliens.
Mhm.
But there's also problems with, like, how do I, for one, play this NPC, and how do my players relate to them? If they are too strange? Because, like, part of it is, like, for some particularly strange aliens, though you also get into this realistically with sci-fi, of, like, if this elf is 1,000 years old, I don't know how to try and think like that. Like,
Right.
but
not only
tired.
that, but the different types can actually have different intentions or wants throughout the universe, and it could have like no correlation with the human want and desire. So
Right.
then they may never even have a truce nor alliance.
Mhm.
yeah.
And you've seen shows and movies try to make the aliens truly alien and not just humans with different prosthetics taped to their faces. So what's the Amy Adams one? Is it Contact? No, the one that she was in with the
Yeah.
like
Where
that
time,
movie was
language and time.
Yeah, that movie was fantastic because if you learn how to think like the alien, your entire perception of time changes. But there's a reference, if you haven't seen it, and of course I can't even think of the name right
Arrival.
now, but
Got it.
Arrival, thank you.
Google for it.
If you haven't seen it, watch it, because it's really one of the best movies I've seen in a very long time, and it's unique. But it was very interesting. They still snuck very sneakily reference points between how we think as human beings and their culture. So their perception of time is different. They change everything, and yet they still mourn one another. They still have compassion for one another. There's reference points for emotional connection, and that's how the movie actually translates it for the viewer to see that these are an alien species, but there's still that bit of connection there, which might not be reality if we ever meet aliens or how we play them in the game. The other one was the last episode or the last season of Discovery, where they tried to create these complete alien, you don't know what these things are. I don't think they paid it off well, because I don't think that they know how to run that show very well, but they tried to present these creatures that they're not even necessarily aware the rest of the universe exists, and so they're just destroying things because, well, we need to keep the lights on. But they have these hard discussions inside between the characters, talking about like every assumption we have to make about them is completely wrong because they're going to be completely alien to us. And even then they balked at the end because I'm giving spoilers for Discovery. It's been out for 2 years. I don't care. But in the end, they created a reference point. It's like, oh, they care for their young. There's our common ground with them. And that was like this. So there's ways to make the creatures really, really totally alien. But as long as you keep an emotional link that we can recognize, that alien story becomes very compelling and inviting without being overbearing. And I thought those were two things where I really saw it develop well.
2 points to come up
way
on.
too long.
2 points come up to me on that one. So if you want to see that done well, Ender's Game. That's a good one.
Oh, the buggers. Yeah, the buggers. Yeah.
That's actually a better way to do that than what most modern sci-fi is doing right now.
But you have to go deeper than the first novel to get that.
Well, even in the first, even in like just Ender's Game,
you get into like the third.
You get towards the end there where they were trying to understand. He figures out their
alien, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you still get that set in there. But as far as trying to play that, trying to be alien, it can be tricky. So one of the things I do is you have your hierarchy of needs as humans. Every sentient species is going to have a hierarchy of needs. Pick which is always going to start with bodily security. If you're not alive, you can't do anything. So there's always going to be a desire for protecting the self, the body. Even in ants, they run away when you try to kill them. So
Okay.
you have this basic starting point, and then you build up from there. As a world builder, you would build up from there on what's the hierarchy of needs for this species as a whole. And then you can have differences in individuals, because the queen is going to have a different hierarchy of needs than the ant worker, but those hierarchy of needs do have overlap, and there's a large disparity between those two. So humans have very similar basic needs, very similar desires. If you know the basic desires of of one human, you have a general idea of the basic desires of most other humans. Their body autonomy, and then you work up from there on fulfillment and things like that. So doing the same thing with your aliens can make them believable. That doesn't mean you have to make them just like have the same ones as humans, because they may not. They're going to have the borderline survival stuff. But in their society, if they have thousands of eggs at a time, they're not going to care if 50 of them die, and they won't understand why you care if 50 of your kids die in some orphanage fire. They won't understand the problem. They've got 50 kids, just one of them. If you're doing like a sea species or something like that, which would have an impossibility of getting off the ground without some kind of special technology, but that's beside the point. There's a lot you can do with it. You can do a lot of stuff and play fantasy with it if you want to get your species up and interacting with each other. But after that's done, figure out their basic needs as a species, and then you can start playing around with it.
Cool.
I did not think we would end up on Maslow here, but I really like that like thought process of when you're developing your aliens, of looking at it through that lens of what would their hierarchy of needs look like, based on the way that they developed and their physiology is, and their relationship with their environment and so on and so forth. I've never thought about taking it that way. I want to apply that to now all my like D&D monsters and stuff too.
Well, yeah,
that's very interesting. That makes me think of I'm tangenting here. But brings me back to the old Dragon Magazine series of the ecology of the whatever. But thinking through that process for every alien species that you introduce into your sci-fi can really make them feel more grounded in the setting and in your players' minds, I suppose, especially if a player is trying to play as one.
Yeah.
So the comment about having 1,000 eggs or whatever and didn't care if you lost 50, it reminded me of a book I read. Terrible book, but there was it was awful. But there was this snake-like race, and they had lots of offspring each time, and I want to say they picked all the males and just threw them all into boot camp basically their whole life, because they had so many, and then they would pick out one or two for whatever particular thing, like, okay, you're gonna go be royalty or whatever, but because they had so many, they didn't care, like they didn't feel like they were losing a son or whatever because they had so freakishly many. That's a weird. Technically, it wasn't science fiction or aliens, but the concept reminded me of it. But I also wanted to add, I feel like, getting back on aliens, one thing I see people kind of go overboard with is they will put too many different types of aliens, too many different ones, instead of like trying to really flesh out one or two. And I guess a really super example of that would be Star Wars. I'm assuming we've all seen the original Star Wars.
The Cantina scene, yeah.
The Cantina, yeah. There's like 10, 12, 15 different aliens in there. And you're assuming...
And a lot of people know what each one is named.
Yeah, but like you're assuming this little bar in Hodunk Nowhere has the means to meet 15 different dietary needs
Yeah.
and have the different cups they can drink out of. I mean, some of those guys couldn't drink out of a regular cup, but
I mean,
there
so,
they
you know,
are.
most
We're
of them
assuming
that didn't have
post-scarcity, right?
mouths had straws, proboscis. So I mean, you know,
It's science fantasy. It's one of those things marks it as science fantasy, right?
Yeah, magic.
magic drinks.
But actually, Scrat, that kind of leads into what I was thinking too, is how you want to use the aliens, because in Star Wars, especially the original trilogy, they're really just settings. They're just to give that feel, right? So how do you want to use it in your game? What's it going to benefit you? Because something like what Compass was talking about, if you're going so estranged from it, but there's maybe these little threads, depending on how estranged you're getting, one of the questions that could be part of your story is, what does it mean to be human? Because that really comes up in a lot of these, like Ender's Game, I think does that. And a lot of the aliens ones where we're so different, but there's these threads, like in Arrival too. So what does it mean to be human could be something you want in your story, and you can use aliens to kind of play with that and see where your characters go. I think another thing to think about too would be, just from a game standpoint, is, are the aliens a playable character, or are they just setting, or are they the bad guys? That could determine, depending on what kind of story you want to tell. That would be an important decision to make in your game, and or choosing a setting, because of course a lot of pre-made settings have that already decided. I haven't played Starfinder well, but they kind of just have the blah of alien races to choose from. Is that correct? Or
well, the Starfinder had your standard kind of races with they do have elves, dwarves, you know, and all that stuff,
right?
But they've actually made them rare. Those are not rare, those are uncommon races. And you have like the Vesk, the lizard men race, which is actually a bigger, stronger, kind of Klingon-esque lizard man. And them and other races were introduced instead to give it a more science fiction feel rather than science fantasy.
Okay.
I think that was kind of a mistake, in my opinion. They could have just had they could have just introduced a few different races as they had in the past, but it did work out for them. They still got all these other things. And one of my the character I played in it was really an interesting one. There was a species that would drift between different asteroids in that version of the asteroid belt there. And so it had like butterfly batwing type of things that would drift back and forth. So there's a lot of fun things you can do, especially with science fantasy, because you're not worrying about whether it makes logical sense or not. The more hard sci-fi you go, it does get a lot harder to start introducing an alien race, because of just how crazy humans would be. Because if we look at humans right now, it was years ago when I first heard this, someone said, if aliens existed, then man would actually be the space orcs that would be conquering, be big, buff, conquering all this stuff. Because all these other places have low gravity, they've got all this other stuff that would hinder their physical ability to develop like we have. Our adversity here on Earth has made us stronger. And so we have an interesting kind of concept here. We've made a lot of aliens bigger and stronger than us in our fiction, but in reality, growing up on Earth has made us very beefy, very, very durable. Humans are highly adaptable. In 1 or 2 generations, we're used to something. A lot of species can't do that, even on Earth. So there's a lot of things to consider. Are these aliens going to be able to compete with humans? And you can play a lot of fun games with that.
Mass Effect does that a little bit with their aliens. How they excuse why the aliens tend to look more alike, and there's so much diversity within humans, is that unique adaptability with humans makes us have a lot more difference in characteristics than the other alien races.
That's cool.
And I love that series.
Yeah.
All right. So, media recommendations I have. Well, one thing I did want to bring up is you can do. We didn't get to touch on this in Sci-Fi and Sci-Fantasy, but both of them are can have aliens, and both of them can have any type of story you want to tell in it. You can have a thriller in it. You can have a horror in it. You have literally Alien, the movie, is quintessential that's actually quintessential hard sci-fi, because you have very grounded type of things. There is a little bit of fantasy, just enough with the alien type of thing in it, and the whole stuck on a rock and stuff like that. And I'm not sure how the science behind their cryo chambers work, but probably doesn't. But that aside, magic. That aside, that's a very good one to look at for if you want to build the feel of a science fiction while still sprinkling in just enough of the alien stuff.
That is classic too. The horror with aliens can be classic. Going, like
Well,
you
yeah.
were saying earlier, it's so different. It's so foreign. It's so alien.
Because in
Easy to do a
space,
horror.
no one can
No
hear
one
you
can
scream.
hear you scream. Yeah. I mean, you left it there. I had to finish it. Actually, Alien is cool because they went from horror and then told a war story and then got weird.
They went to horror to action and then dropped off a cliff.
Yes, like so that was cool.
So
They
you
jumped
take
genres.
a story and you stretch it as far as possible.
Far too long. Wait, Ripley died. Yeah, we'll bring her back. It's
That's
fine.
fine.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
too bad.
Alien.
I recently played that Aliens Fireteam Elite game.
How is it?
It's really good. I mean, just playing like gameplay wise, it's actually pretty good. But like story wise, it's really, really good. It feels like the first two movies and just continues the story.
Is that the Free League version?
You lost me on that.
It's not the RPG, right?
No, this is computer game shooter.
Oh, computer game. Never mind.
Yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
It's, I guess the best way you can explain it is, what was that movie they tried to make, Pandora or something, started with a P? It was an alien movie.
Pangea? Probably not that.
Well, you know what I'm talking about. So, it's that story, but actually told well and from the military's perspective. It's really good. I mean, the gameplay is super simple. You're just running and shooting, but if you're listening to the story and everything, it's like, oh man, this is actually pretty darn good.
Well, Avatar is set on a planet called Pandora, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where they're mining unobtainium?
Yeah, that's not a really. That one doesn't make logical sense either. That doesn't make
So
logical sense.
clever,
So
Wes
bad.
can't even say it.
Yeah.
It just hurts my brain, that whole thing.
I really dislike the noble
Audience,
savage type of
dumb,
thing
you
they
need
went
to
with
know.
it. Yeah. It's like,
It's Dances with Aliens. It's fine.
It is Dance with It.
except it makes less. It makes no sense. The Dances with Aliens thing. It just doesn't work.
It didn't work.
All right. Other people liked it. If you liked it for just like a popcorn film, that's okay. You can tell me in the comments. Oh, we didn't do a quote last time.
Prometheus.
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 Oh, Prometheus.
Yes, that's the alien movie. Yeah, that tried to talk about the origins. Yeah.
I didn't know it was an alien movie when I was watching it. This
That's
girl I was
hilarious.
with, she drug me to the theater, and by the end, when the alien was coming out, I was like, "Man, this looks a lot like Alien." And then it came out, and I was like, "Wait a minute, this is an alien movie."
Did you know that it was directed by Ridley Scott when you went?
No, I had no idea what we were watching or what we were doing. I was just there.
He's just along for the ride.
I didn't know either. I watched the movie not realizing it was connected either. I get it. I get it.
He
The
did
reveal
try to
was
hide
big.
it. Yeah, he tried to hide it. Like he really did. So and failed. But not for you guys, but so.
Well, it does present the idea. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. The idea of maybe thinking about. I'm going to make this my final thought since we're getting close. So this is my final thought, and then we'll go around from me. So we'll go my final thought, Josh, Dan, Wesley, Compass, and then Levi and Scrat. Okie dokie.
Sounds good.
So my final thought is going to touch back onto the idea that you brought up, that Ryan kind of, you and Ryan's discussion, Dan, that similar form. And going back to that, if you do want to do that, try and kind of pick out whether you're going to go with evolution as an origin or if you're going to go with intelligent design as an origin. Because if you know that going in, if you're building this fresh, if you know that going in, then making people look similar is a way to signal to your players that there's a higher power at work. There's some kind of intelligence at work behind the universe. Mm-hmm. If you don't do that, then you can have energy beings and stuff like that, like they do in Star Trek and stuff, and shape changers that coalesce and change mass forms, which is not really how that would work, but okay. So if you can get a grasp on that, it is big thinking. If you're just going to do a one shot or something, it doesn't really matter. But if you have a grasp of that going in, you can better be able to weave consistency through your story, because religion is going to exist in humans, but why would it exist in another species if they have all... I understand the arguments for it, but it would be very, very different. Like the thought patterns, the biology, all of those things would be so varied and different that you may not even be able to comprehend that what you're looking at is an alien at all. Like you might not comprehend its existence of being alive.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this idea of having a knowledge of one or the other, it does lean towards the idea of, well, maybe you want to have some kind of intelligence in there so your players won't just be destroying stuff they don't understand. But that's going to be on you as the world designer. So check that out. That's my final thought. What you got, Josh?
I will just say, and I know it's going to come back to bite me in the next video, but sci-fi is definitively better with aliens than without.
Ooh, I'm gonna, yeah.
That's my
All right.
my story.
Challenge
I'm
accepted. That's the quote for this time. Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
All right.
You know what it should be for last time? It's too late, but it should have been mic drop.
Mic drop.
It should be, yes.
Yeah, with all the editing I'm gonna have to do.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Just put it at the beginning once and say that's all you get.
Just have the opening just be a mic going.
You just sketch a mic drop and flash that image. Not even a GIF.
Oh, I figured out what I'm gonna do now.
Wind lines.
I figured out what I'm gonna do now.
I think you mean a GIF.
GIF. No.
I don't pay enough attention to how I pronounce it because I have a hard time caring.
I call it a Jiffy Giffy. I don't know. You guys
Sure. Have fun.
I upset everybody.
I'm terrible like that. I make my kids say soda pop just to make everybody mad.
That's how I do it. Soda pop.
All right.
Oh,
my final
brain. No, I don't. Why?
My final thought may or may not clash well. I think it goes perfect after Josh's, is just a fun idea that's totally been used before. So I'm not saying this is my original idea, but something that could be really fun to do is make the humans the aliens. Lots of different ways you can do it. One that I really like actually is, actually, no, I'm going to save that for next time because it would be, so make the humans the aliens. Either as a bad guy or an incoming species, have your player start as some kind of character race. Maybe not. Could be a fun surprise too to bring the humans in later, but flip flop it, because alien it just means different from or other. So that could be a fun way to flip it on its head.
Nice, I like that. I'm trying to think about this. For me, if you want to push your aliens to be so freaky that you have to almost artificially insert emotional or ethical connections that we would recognize as human beings to make them relatable, that's totally fine with me. I am also fine, and I like your idea. I'm just going, if you work on that hierarchy of needs and you just want to stick different prosthetics on them, go ahead and do that too. I mean, it's like, make them just different enough that you're not just playing a human with 4 arms. Like, just give them a little bit of a tweak to where they have different drives or different motivations, and that would be fine. So I think I would prefer to have aliens that are way far out there, that you literally have to try to create a little bit of connection in there, but that might be really hard for folks to play. So if you just want to give them a little bit of a tweak, maybe 3 degrees off, because you go 1,000 years 3 degrees off from where you're aiming, you're going to end up in a totally different spot. I think that would be fine too. So I have my preference, but I'm not going to shoot anybody who wants to play with the different color ears and a new set of forehead ridges for that day. That's fine. Have fun.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm next. So I guess what my final thoughts would be is bouncing off of previous thoughts already expressed, but kind of more of the negative aspect of things. When designing an alien race, I guess human included, make it so that when the players are looking at it, think from their perspective if violence should or should not be the answer, or is violence the answer. So always keep that in mind when designing a race and from the player's perspective, because no matter how nice or how intricate you make an alien race, just remember the negative consequence.
Yeah. There you go.
And I believe it was me next?
Yes.
Okay. I can't fully agree that it is strictly better to have aliens, but I think if you are running sci-fi and like strong, like hard space travel, like very sci-fi, and you don't have aliens, you should explain that to people before they come to your game, because that'll be a bit of a whiplash because of how ubiquitous aliens are in current instantiation of sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a note before you make that decision.
Yeah, session 0 discussion on that one.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, for sure.
Good point.
All right, Scrat.
It's me. Mind flayers from Dungeons and Dragons are aliens, and I won't accept otherwise.
I mean, you're not wrong.
No, they're right. You're right.
Spelljammer aliens.
So, I guess really the only thing I got here on a more serious note is if you're going to add aliens and stuff, and this, you can take this little tidbit of advice and apply it to any kind of race or anything you're making. And I've seen this happen a lot. Somebody makes a race or an alien or a culture or whatever. They will make everybody in that group the same. They believe the same. They think the same. They all get the hive mind, right? They all go to the same church on Sunday, just everything. You gotta diversify it a bit, You can have your alien race and maybe have a little more than just 2 factions that don't get along, You can have struggle within one faction, right? Just people don't all think the same, but I see that happening a lot. And that's, I will admit, when we're talking about games and stuff, like sometimes you kind of have to lean into making things a little hive-mindy for simplicity's sake, but from a world building perspective, I feel like a lot of stories and movies and whatnot out there, they fall into that trap. They're just making an entire race exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, to go back with the ant example again, 2 colonies of ants do not agree with each other at all. So, there you go. All right. Well, I believe we've come to the end of this particular chat where we were talking about there are aliens, and hopefully you got something out of it. And we took an interesting start off, a little bit more serious middle and finish, but there you go. As always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
All right, gents. Bathroom break time.
Fun. Sounds good.
All right, folks, I'm going to have to check out. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
sorry I missed.
Good hanging with you.
But, yeah, it was
thank you
fun.
for
Thank
joining.
you so much, and have a great rest of the discussion. I'm sorry I'm missing the last ones. I want to see how many fights people get into over space opera. That'll be great.
I'll just sit back.
All
and
right,
smile.
I'll just post some gifts in the chat. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.
Have a good one.
Ooh, there was a mic drop.
He didn't
All right,
wait
yeah,
for my
I'm gonna-
response.
No,
I'm gonna have to be getting on off too. And
That's fair.
so Dan, just remember to mention how great our wives are, how cool and smart and beautiful they are. Other than that, the rest doesn't really matter.
Amen, my brother.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you, man.
Peace.
Well, if there were aliens, they left after they heard the first of this episode.
I mean, or got really disappointed after the start.
Or it just got real awkward.
Yeah.
It's true.
All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah, same.
Oh, I guess I should run too while I got the chance.